Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Daniel Chavez Jr. I apologize for the delay tonight. Um, the life of a celebrity is so many adoring fans, it's hard to keep up with everybody. Just kidding, just kidding. So, welcome to a new segment that I'm calling The Viewpoint. Three topics, two viewpoints, one very interesting conversation. And what better way than to have two opposing views that are very vocal in the community to be our first guest on this segment. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming former homeless commissioner Lucy Cartagena and creator of the Citizens for Better Oxnard, Manuel Herrera.
Hello,
Hi,
Daniel.
Hi, Manuel. Hi, Lucy. Thank you both for joining me for this new segment of Oxnard Live called The Viewpoint. I am sure it will be a very interesting conversation, to say the least.
My first question to you, Daniel, is do we call you Daniel? Do we call you Mr. Commissioner? Do we call you Mr. Talk Show Host? You wear so many hats these days.
Mr. Almighty or Mr.
Yeah.
Big Head. You know what? I think Daniel's fine. We'll keep it casual. I know I got the tie on, but we'll keep it casual.
I'm the one pretty casual because I see you're in a suit and Lucy's looking really nice and I'm in a t-shirt. I guess you could tell I'm the retired one, right?
Lucy always looks nice, so I don't, I have never seen Lucy have a bad day. She has always got herself together, even if she's. I remember back, Lucy, when you have your an event in Plaza Park to bring all these local organizations together that people go and volunteer and learn how to support their community. You were moving tables, moving tents, directing people, and you still look all together. And I'm thinking, man, I would have been sweating, I would have been dying, but you were just zoom, zoom, zoom. So Lucy is awesome. So Manual retirement, I'm hoping that I will get there very, very soon, but they tell me I have to be a certain age. So
Right.
so let's get right into it. We have three very good topics that deals with the city of Oxnard, and of course, we could have had so many more topics to talk about, but we narrowed it down to three different topics. So for our viewers, this is how the viewpoint is going to operate. So we have three topics. Each topic is going to be given 10 minutes. Our guests tonight are going to have an opportunity to respond to each other, and try to not debate each other, but provide a different point of view for the other and for the public to see. And at the end, we'll shake hands, well, virtually shake hands, and then, know that we have our community in very good hands. So let's jump to the very first topic. The first topic, and it was selected by our panel. Out of the list of topics, they selected it. So this is the order that it's going to be. And our first topic is going to be in regards to police. As we all know, the police have been a very hot topic over the years. And with the divisiveness between the community and law enforcement, one has to wonder, has it trickled down to the city of Oxnard? So, Lucy, we'll start with you. If you can go ahead and give your opinion, if you feel that the decisiveness, the tension, if it has trickled down to the city of Oxnard, or have we had that blow past us and we're doing a lot better?
are you talking about what's happening nationwide, like with George Floyd and all that about the tensions with police nationwide?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that's, that topic. And if those tensions, are they in Oxnard, from your viewpoint, do you believe that's what, are we experiencing that here in the city of Oxnard, those tensions, those
I think so.
attitudes?
Hmm. Yes, we have, only because I don't know if people, they're young, but do they remember the riots from the Oxnard PD? Do they remember, those things have always been there, especially if you're black or brown, you're going to feel that, especially if you're youth. So there, anybody can say their stories or their encounters or their interactions. How is it right now? It depends who you are and how you live. So the tensions are always going to be there, especially when we have police on campus. So as long as police are on campus and influencing or changing the dynamics of how a youth might see a police, when you see them on campus every day, you no longer have that respectful authority per se, because now you see this person interacting every day. So it gets kind of harder and then better. So it could be a plus or a minus depending who you are and how you live. So that's where it is. Some people are privileged to never have to have such an encounter, and some people aren't. Some people might call it harassment. So it just depends who you are, where you live at, and what type of lifestyle you have.
I want to ask you about that, and the manual. I'm going to have you jump in and talk about that. You and correct me if I'm wrong, Lucy, but it sounds like you're saying that law enforcement on campus is actually a bad thing and a negative thing, when in reality, it isn't supposed to be taken that way. Is that correct? Am I hearing you right?
That's correct. I've
Okay.
always been an advocate to take police off campus, especially in the elementary level, because when you have a police officer talking to an 8-year-old, 7-year-old, 6-year-old, 10-year-old, it does a different dynamics. I think what people fail to do is hold parents accountable. We have to be accountable for our own children. When police discipline, there's the problem. A police officer shouldn't be disciplining your child. That is your job and your responsibility. So we have to invest more in our community as opposed to throwing it on to police. That's not their job, for one. And then for two, that takes away and just makes a spiral of what this youth could have or couldn't have had or done. So yeah, I strong opponent. I don't believe police should be on campus. I don't believe they should be doing any type of disciplinary policy. And I think that goes back to every statistic available of why it shouldn't.
Manuel, I want to listen to your thoughts about that. One, in regards to your viewpoint, if those tensions that occurred during the George Floyd, if they trickle down to the city of Oxnard. And then I also want to hear your response to Lucy in regards to that there should not be any law enforcement personnel on school campuses, especially elementary, as you pointed out. What are your thoughts on that, Manuel?
Well, first of all, you are going to get two different viewpoints because, yeah, I completely disagree. But let me explain why. So, first of all, I grew up in La Colonia, so I lived there for 18 years, and trust me, when I grew up, I hated the police. I hated the police, and I can honestly say that I was harassed a few times because I used to go to Fremont Junior High, and we used to walk to school. So from La Colonia, me and my friends would walk to Fremont Junior High, and lo and behold, we would always get pulled over. I mean, the cops, we'd be walking, but the cops would pull over and, hey, what are you guys doing? Where are you going? What are you doing in this neighborhood? And that kind of stuff. So, and then I grew up in the era of the brown berets and all that stuff. So I remember all that. I remember what happened on Cooper Road with the brown berets, and when the Bank of Olivia was burnt down. And I mean, that may be before your time, Daniel, but so I grew up with all that. And so back then, yeah, I think things were tough, or pretty bad. But to say that right now, things are still bad and everything, I disagree in the fact that I actually thank God that Oxnard is not like these other Chicago and all these other cities where the George Floyd incidents happen and everything. I mean, we don't see that here. There has been incidents in the past, like Limon, when Limon was shot and killed, and in situations like that were obviously, it's too bad that something like that happened, but you can't really compare, and not to minimize what happened to Limon, but that wasn't, in my opinion, intentional, of what happened. Whereas to me, the George Floyd thing, obviously that was pretty bad, and that was intentional, and that was so wrong. Anyway, so having said that, now that, you know, I'm an adult, now that I do my best to help the community, I'm actually now working as much as I can side by side with the police department, the very people that I used to hate. But a lot of it I give credit to ex-chief Whitney, because I think he did an amazing job. And it wasn't until he came on board that I saw a difference in the police department. And then now with the new chief Benitez, I mean, he's, to me, he's just like Whitney, you know. I mean, and they both work together hand in hand. And so, you know, I think with the Citizens Academy that they have, with the the walks that they have in different neighborhoods in La Colonia and on the south side, Factory Park and all that. And then, as you probably heard, I recently was asked to join the Chiefs Advisory Board, which I joined. So you know, so things have changed, and things have changed for the better, in my opinion. So I mean, those are my thoughts on that.
Now, what are your thoughts in regards to Lucy's comments that law enforcement should not be on campus, that it sends the wrong message, that more involvement needs to come from our parents and not so much law enforcement taking on that role?
I mean, I agree with her definitely that it should all start at the home. I mean, you know, is if your kid's a troublemaker, I blame the parents. So definitely, Lucy, I agree with you 100%. It starts at the home. However, because we are in the times that we are with school shootings and everything, I mean, I think it's good that we have police officers on campus, you know, and they're not there to discipline kids and everything. And if they're doing that, then yeah, that definitely needs to be addressed, because that's not what they should be doing. They should be there to foster goodwill with the students and interact with them. I mean, that's what the intentions are, you know, with the police being on campus. So in that sense, I like that they're there, and I think that's a good thing.
Lucy,
Yeah,
your
you know,
response?
yeah, so for one, I never said that it was bad right now or that it was worse. But for two, like I said before, depending on the person or not the person, because you yourself admit, Manuel, that you were harassed as a youth. So what makes you think they're not being harassed now? So that would be my question. So do
Yeah.
you or do you not? I work at the high schools and I work with the youth. So I know otherwise. Am I saying that our police force is right now running around rampant and harassing? No, what I'm saying is there's still the same stigma and there still is the same actions that were brought on 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and now. So what do we do to change that? We work with the community. Do we continue to work with the police? Yes. As you work side by side, so do I work side by side, because we're not going to change anything unless we work side by side. But on another note too, do we hold them accountable? Yes, we do. We hold everybody accountable. So that means if something's wrong, we bring it to the attention and we work on changing the solution. We don't just say, hey, you did wrong, do it better next time. We hold people accountable the way I expect to be held accountable, the way I'm sure you expect to be held accountable. If we're wrong, we're wrong. Except the only problem with them is when they're wrong, someone's dead. So we want to make sure we don't have that. We want to make sure.
Lucy, you went mute.
I'm sorry, that still held accountable in every aspect, because they're in a higher position, like the clergy, like the teachers, like anybody in such a high position. We want to hold accountable. Why? Because it makes us safer. It makes the community safer as a whole. So it's good you sit on the advisory council and make sure that you're able to hold them accountable. But I have to disagree with you, because I don't think it was just Whitney. It was actually our police chief Williams, the first ever Black female chief, that when she was there with Limon, stepped up to the plate and worked on faith-based and worked on everything. And she set a precedence and example for Whitney and Benita to follow through.
Manuel, your response to that, because she kind of, you know, she directed a couple of questions to you.
Yeah. Well, what I meant by it started with Whitney was that for me, it started with Whitney. I wasn't that involved back then. So when Chief Williams was around, I didn't know much about her and I wasn't really that active in the community. But once I started getting more active, and then got to know Chief Whitney and everything and started, working with them. And that's when I saw the kind of a chief he was. And I felt I never had that opportunity before. But again, part of it was my doing, that I wasn't that involved in the community like I was before. Now, I still, don't think things are really bad right now with the police and the people of Oxnard. Of course, you're going to have your incidents. There's good people, there's bad people, there's good cops, there's bad cops. And I do agree with you, Lucy, 100% when I say that the police definitely need to be held accountable, as do our city officials, the mayor, the city manager, the city council. Absolutely. And I think that's our job as members of the community. And you, Lucy, who is very well respected, Daniel, people like that. I think it's our duty to make sure that we hold our city officials accountable. Absolutely, 100%.
Thank you guys for that. We'll move on to our next topic, which is Measure E. Back in the November 2020 election, residents were faced with a kind of a hard decision in the midst of a pandemic. Do we vote in favor of a sales tax increase that had no end date, or do we vote it down? Recently, the city council voted unanimously on priorities for the city moving forward over the next 5 years. Since we started with Lucy last time, we'll start with Manuel. Do you believe that the city council made the right recommendations to city staff as far as priorities goes moving forward?
I think that for the most part, I do. And we also need to keep in mind that, just because these are priorities doesn't mean nothing else is going to be done. Nothing else will be recommended. We got to start somewhere. So, I think that with time, as years go by and the money starts coming in and, and again, as Lucy said, they got to be held accountable. So there was promises made, in order to pass this. I, for one, voted for it. And I'm proud that I did. And I think it was something that was definitely needed. But I also say that I will do my part in holding the city council, the city manager accountable on how this money is spent. There was a lot of people, well, not a lot of people. There were some people that were against it, in my opinion, for all the wrong reasons. Like you mentioned about that there's no end date. Well, Measure O has an end date and it's going to be ending pretty soon. And then what? So this tax that we now have, the sales tax, well, I'm glad it doesn't have an end date, because we can be guaranteed that this money will continue to come in. And as long as it's spent wisely, and as long as it's to help the community and fix the roads and everything, then I'm all for it. I'm glad that it passed.
Lucy, I want to get your opinion on it, because I know you were also a candidate for city council for District 4, and if I remember correctly, you were opposed to Measure E, and you said that we should have been looking at ways to reinvest in our community versus trying to raise the taxes. Your opinion on the city council's decision when it came to the priorities?
I think they were still wrong. I still oppose Measure E. It was ambiguous, had no end date, and even the 5-year plan is still too vague. To turn around and liken it to Measure O is a disservice, because Measure O didn't work. We had to take it to a ballot to force the city to use it for what it was intended to. So now we're going to get a slush fund of money and hope that we do it right this time. It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. Try one time and let's try again, and now permanently. So it doesn't make any sense, especially when the city has this huge homeless problem and addiction problem and a housing problem. So unless we fix those problems, the internal city problems that we have, to throw in money is not going to fix it unless they're actually throwing in money to fix these problems. We still had, after this last winter, no winter warming shelter. The winter warming shelter provides temporary housing during foul weather. So when the homeless are out there sleeping in the rain, the homeless are out there without a bathroom, without clean running water. It's in inhumane living conditions, and we go ahead and we provide that in the city. And as community leaders, we should first demand humane process for those of the least of us. And we don't. We don't. We just keep thinking that this new monies will take care of everything when it doesn't. We have a transition center 7 years down the line to house homeless. We're talking about 7 years from now. In the meantime, what? So I think our priorities are misguided, and they're not honed to what we need right here, right now. I think the investment into the community would have been the better choice, because nobody wants to live around the neighborhood crackhead. So unless you fix those neighborhoods and fix the code enforcements in it, and we have parking problems, we can't fix anything. Throwing more money is not fixing the solution. It's just band-aiding it. Waste
I
of
want to
money.
ask, I want to ask you, Lucy, and just for our viewers that are watching, Lucy is actually referring to Measure N that was on the ballot last during the November 2020 election that forced the city to use Measure O towards road repairs, with the argument that that was what Measure O was intended for. But when you actually read the ballot language of Measure O, it was a general tax that was going to everywhere. But Measure N said restricted it to roads only. But I want to ask you, Lucy, because the surveys that the public participated in, that was where those priorities were coming from. So do you believe, though, first, did you participate in the survey? And then two, do you believe that the city did something dishonest and falsified those results?
I don't think they put the results. What happened is not everybody got to take the survey. So unless you had internet and you were aware of the survey, would you be able to take it? During the pandemic, it restricted a lot of people and it restricted a lot of voters. So it was already hard enough to pass something during the pandemic. But I want to remind you that Measure O was made for gang intervention and for youth. And we never got youth services or gang intervention out of it either. We put the money, funnel money to POW, always POW or Boys and Girls Club. Same old things recycled over and over. But it would have been better to be able to bring back the summer job programs so that the youth can have a job during the summer with that type of money. So we still don't have that. Still year after year after year and summer after summer after summer, youth don't have a job and we don't have those funds. So we kind of have to think of what works and what we could do, but Measure O wasn't used for that. And Measure O monies were not utilized right. And they're still not utilized right. And it's sad that that Measure N had to come out that the voters voted for. That's really disheartening.
And Lucy, I'll just say real quick before we take comments from Manuel, is that I completely agree with you. Measure O was intended for an array of different things, and it almost was unrealistic. We also end up learning that that city manager at that time, he was fired for corruption, for mismanagement of city funds. It was this big old thing. We all remember the FBI DA investigation of City Hall. So I agree with you that Measure O definitely was not used for its intended purpose. And I'll leave it at that. Manuel, your thoughts?
First, Lucy, I want to make sure I heard you correct. Did you call Measure E a slush fund?
Yes, I did. Yes, I'm afraid if it's not utilized right, that's what it will be, like Measure O. When Measure O monies were utilized for everything else, but what does that make it? Does it make it a general fund or does it make it a slush fund? So if Measure O does the same and we start using it for general purposes, it doesn't become what it's utilized for, what we voted for. It becomes a slush fund. So that's yet to be seen. We're not there yet. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I do want to say that if they do have a 5-year plan and we are going to utilize the monies right, well, then please I will be the first to say I was wrong, because I would love to be wrong.
Because, you know, one of the things that I deal with on Citizens for Better Oxnard is what I call misinformation. And you know, that's why I wanted to ask about the slush fund. When people throw that word around and they call it a slush fund, I mean, that's not what it is. The slush fund is where people can use it any way they want, you know, with no terms, no nothing. And that's not the case. Matter of fact, that's why it came in front of the city council not too long ago, so that they can vote on. And that's why there was a survey, so that they can get the input from the people. So, you know, they're trying to do the right thing with this. And matter of fact, on my computer, I have a list of everything that the city manager is recommending to the city council, which is maintaining 911 safety, restoring landscaping services, securing long-term financial sustainability, addressing homelessness, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not a slush fund. And when you say that, you know, the monies should be used, the Measure O should have been used, and that Measure E should be used to keep, you know, kids off the street and everything. Well, that's what PAL does. I mean, and that's some of the money goes to PAL, yes. Now, La Colonia Boxing Club is part of PAL. So, you know, we're better than to you know, funnel the money to places like La Colonia Boxing Club to keep the kids off the street. So, you know, there's all this is being done correctly. It's all being done the way it should be done, you know. And as far as Measure N, I mean, I think that's terrible. I mean, we don't even want to go in there. That actually should have been a topic, because I would have loved to talk about that. But you know, I think, once again, as long as we hold the city council accountable, I'm confident that, and this is why I voted for it, I'm confident in the city council that they will do the right thing, especially now. You know, we have Mayor Zaragoza as our mayor. We have Mr. Turan as our city council member, you know, so I'm confident that it will be used in the right way.
Lucy, your response?
Yeah, so yes, it is a slush fund until it's utilized. So until it is, just like you brought up Measure E, Measure O, but when you bring up these other measures, they've already not worked, and we know that. But yet you're talking about things that may happen, or what it could be utilized for, what the city manager's wish list is. Nothing's implemented, Manuel. So stop putting the cart before the horse. Why don't we wait until monies are allocated and see how they're allocated? And then if they're allocated for what they said they were going to be allocated for. Now, we do have something to go back to that didn't work, the Measure O. So we know that that didn't work. And we know that that was utilized wrong. So can we go ahead and do an assessment of what could and could not happen? Yes, we can. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm not going on some city manager's wish list, and I'm not going on what certain people got to do a survey. Not everybody got to, because there's 250, 100,000 people. So if they got a survey of a couple hundred people, that means nothing. So until everybody has a say and everybody has a voice, it doesn't mean anything. And a wish list is just that, a wish list. Let's wait until we get there. That's what I'm saying. And you mentioned La Colonia Boxing, when, don't forget, just a few years ago, that was on the chopping block. So let's not try to do wish lists. Let's try to see what's actually done, implemented, and utilized first. That's what I say.
Well, let me clarify. La Colonia Boxing Club was not on the chopping block. What they were going to do is they were going to cut back on some of the coaches that were getting paid. So La Colonia Boxing Club was not going to be closed. That was never the intention. So just want to clarify that. But, and, you know, this thing about a wish list, it's a recommendation. It's not a wish list. It's a recommendation that the city managers made to the city council. And like I said, I read you everything that's on there, or most everything. And it includes homelessness, restoring city infrastructure. I mean, you know, these are recommendations, and every single one of these benefit the citizens of Oxnard. Restoring youth and senior programs. I mean, it's all there. Now, as far as people you're saying that not enough people took the survey and everything, but you and I both know, Lucy, because we've been to city council meetings where it's just you and I in the audience, or you and I and 5 other people. It's very hard to get people involved. I wish more people got involved. That's why I created Citizens for a Better Oxnard, to push people, to get them involved. It is so hard to get people involved. So, if there's any blame as to why not too many people took the survey, the blame goes to the people. Everybody has social media. I mean, I'm sure there's some families that don't have internet access, but the majority do. And it's up to the people. We can't always hold their hands and make them do anything. So it's up to the people to stay informed. And if there's a survey, take the survey. I mean, it's that simple.
I just want to make a quick comment that in regards to what Lucy was referring to about items being on the chopping block, back in 2019, the city council was faced with a number of items being proposed to either close or be reduced dramatically. And fortunately enough, Measure O funds were able to keep some of those afloat temporarily. It didn't solve the issue. It just kind of put a Band-Aid on them until the city got its financial stable. Lucy, it looked like you had something to respond to Manuel, and then we'll move on to our next topic.
I guess I just want to say again, that's not fair that you say that about the voters, that it's their responsibility. It's ours as leaders to encourage them. It's ours as leaders because we take on a role that they depend, and we're their voice. So when we fail to bring out the people, it's because we failed. If we have a connection to the people, then that's where they get their strength. So we need to strengthen them to bring them out, whatever it may take. Like if they're unsure, then it's our responsibility to give out the information, good or bad. I mean, I have to give it out whether I like it or not, only because everybody has a right to make their own choice. So that's what I have to remember. But I still say, Manuel, wait until the money's allocated and let's see where it's allocated to. That's it.
Well, and let me just say this. It's not our responsibility to make the people stand up and do stuff. It's our responsibility to get it out there, to give the message. And that's what you and I do a lot, Lucy. I've worked with you many times in the community, and trust me, nobody works harder than you, man. And I wish we had 100,000 Lucys out there. I really do. But and just like you said about the cops at the schools, that it all starts at the home, right? Well, even this starts at the home. People need to be held, the citizens need to be held accountable too. They need to get up, they need to do their part. They need to there's information. Where we live in a time right now where social media, I mean, there's Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. There's no excuse to not be informed anymore. There's no excuse. And we can't hold the people's hands and force them to do something. We can get the information out there. Again, that's why I created Citizens for a Better Oxnard. But I can't make people go there. I can't make people join. I can't make people, take a step. But I can put it out there, and now it's up to them.
Thank you, guys. We'll move to our next and final topic, which falls right in line to Lucy's experience, and she continues to advocate about this. As a former homeless commissioner, she was one of the most fiercest fighters for the homeless community on the commission, and our topic is homelessness. As we know, and Lucy alluded to it during our last topic, was the navigation center that is being built, and it's going through the process. It's almost completed, that it will be set up right behind City Hall in downtown Oxnard. But there's also another layer in regards to winter warming shelters. It also touches on the Vagabond, which was a state initiative. Lucy, we'll start with you on this one. What do you believe the city is lacking when addressing homelessness, and what should they be doing to correct it?
We lack mental health, and we also lack I'm sorry, the city of Oxnard does not have any kind of substance abuse program. We have the needle exchange program, which works very well, but we do not have any kind of substance abuse program at all. All cities in Ventura County rely on the jails to detox a person. And we as citizens rely on the police to take some homeless person because they're drug addicts to the jail, hoping that now they kick in the jail. We have a methadone clinic, but we still don't work on addictions and mental health. That is our number one lacking because there was a study done by the California, what is it? I don't want to call it CISA, Channel Islands University, that showed that homeless people did not have mental health. 40% did not have mental health till after they were homeless because depression does a lot. So if we know that 40% of homeless people are going to have mental health problems, why are we not addressing that now? Education is key. Education to the community is key. We need to be educating the public on homelessness, the 7 steps on it, the 7 reasons for homelessness. And we should be working on preventative measures and education. That should be priority.
I want to ask you, Lucy, because a lot of times people say, well, the services are there. These people are service resistant. And for anybody that doesn't know what that means that they do not want to accept any services that any government agency or any local organization provides. What role should the city be playing if these individuals are choosing to live on the streets and in the conditions that they're living in?
Well, that's interesting you say that because I hear that a lot too. It's like service resistant to what? The city of Oxnard only has 2 services. There is only Salvation Army and there is only the Rescue Mission, and then you have community action. So that's pretty much it. We rely on the County of Ventura to come in with all these other ones through the continuum of care. So when you say service resistant to what? We provide no rent help for rent. We provide nothing. There's no type of dental. You can go to Salvation Army, possibly get it. So service resistant to what? You need to have the services first to be able to be resistant to. But if you provide 1, 2, 3 little things, I mean, come on, you're going to be service resistant. And then on top of that, you have addiction. So we don't provide detox centers and we don't provide anything for those that are service resistant because of drug use. So that's my answer.
Manuel, your thoughts about that? What do you believe the city is lacking when it deals with homeless? What should they be doing? And then your response to Lucy's comments in regards to those that are service resistant.
Well, if homelessness was easy to fix, obviously all the other major cities in the United States wouldn't be having a problem. This is a national epidemic, especially now with COVID and people losing their jobs, losing their homes. It's created even more homeless people. So I get it, trust me. And I, for one, am with Lucy on we need to do something, but I also know that, a lot of it, first of all, it takes money. So thank God for Measure E, because some of that money is going to be used for this. Thank God that we got the navigation center. The city's working on that. Also that Project Room Key, that the old vagabond, so they got that working. So there's things in place. Unfortunately, as we all know, because we deal with the city a lot, there's a lot of red tape. Things take forever to manifest. So it's going to take a while. And I don't know as much about homelessness as Lucy does, but I do know that a lot of it does require county help. It's not just the city, but it also takes the state of California to do its part as well. So, together we got to work it out and try to figure out what we're going to do, to help out. But again, I think we're in the right step with the navigation center and the room key program and so forth. And as far as the people that are resistant to help, I mean, I've seen that myself. And just like I said, you can't force people to do anything. You can't take them by the hand. There are people that are resistant to service, and even whether it's being provided by the county or the city or the state, I mean, either way, there's just some that just don't want any help. It's like, leave me alone, let me do my own thing, and I don't want your help, I don't need your help. And you're going to see that. Fortunately, it's not the majority, it's the minority, at least in my opinion. So, but I think, we're on the right track.
Lucy, I want to ask you, because you've actually gone out to the old Helico site. You've actually gone to where these encampments are popping up, and you've spoken to these individuals. What are their feelings when it comes to service resistance? And I know you mentioned that there isn't enough services being provided. So how can they be service resistant?
So that's a good question, because we know that, for one, the city of Oxnard was supposed to be working about 4 or 5 years ago. We had asked for safe sleep, so that way people that live in their cars, because some people just barely come into homelessness and they're still in their vehicles. Well, what the city does is we ticket them to death and then finally take away their vehicle that was their only refuge and their only safety. So the problem is, we have no safe sleep program. We can implement something as smart as just a safe sleep program so people can sleep safely. What we also have, and we don't have it throughout Ventura County, is there is no gray waste station. So there's nowhere for RVs to dump their waste. So that's going to our oceans. So for the city just to pick any gas station or at the city site so that we can do clean water, gray waste dump, makes a big difference too. There's a lot of things that can be done that don't cost 7.5 million the way the city is using right now for a project that is 8 years down the line. We can do things here now with less money. And we can do it strategically. We can do it with our clergy council. We can do it with our volunteers that are already come out and cutting hedges. I mean, there is so much things that can be done without utilizing $27 million. And Operation Turnkey, even though that does partially work, there has been 11 deaths in 1 year at Operation Turnkey through the Vagabond because of addiction. So they got COVID cases too. That's rampant over there. So there's a lot of things that still can be done on a different aspect. Even as simple as just allocating 1.5 million for the winter warming shelter. Because what we do know about the foul weather shelter, that even though they're there only 90 days, is that they start becoming less service resistant. So then we can actually start working with them. So the trick is, as I go out of Helico and I go out of everywhere, is you start building that connection. And you start building that connection to the people to see what they're lacking, what they're needing, what they need. Majority of them just need a toilet. Majority of them just need pads when they're on their period. Females do. Like, it's very inhumane things. You try being on your period, bleeding through your pants without a pad. Those things are very real. And this is happening here and now. And then you bring in drugs and the rape. The homeless people have the highest violent rate than anybody anywhere. So it's a lot of violence, a lot of rape, and a lot of exploitation. So we should, as a community, start working on how we can even get a few, not wait till the $27 million project is done 7 years from now. What can we do now with a little bit of funds? Let's do it. We should be doing anything and everything. That's my.
Manuel, your response?
Well, but is it the city doing something now? I mean, you say, well, why wait 8 years? They are doing the room keep thing. That's been ongoing for what, the last year or so. And and let me ask you, Lucy, because you were on the homeless commission. So some of these ideas, suggestions that you have and the commission has had and the city has not implemented, let me ask you, do you know why? I mean, is it because they didn't want to? Is it, what reasons did they give? Or, can you share that with us?
Yes. Can I go ahead and answer?
Yeah, by all means,
Okay.
go.
So what happened with Safe Sleep program is, even though we voted on it for the 5-year plan and we took it up to city to get approved, what happened in between the transition, the city added a $60 million price tag to it. So, I mean, a 60,000. We never put a price tag to it. We wanted to implement it, and it was going to be implemented with the church, the Unitarian church downtown, in their parking. But the city added a $60,000 price tag for a 90-day program. So it turned out to be $10,000 per people. So we said, if the city has that much money to give a homeless person, give it to the homeless person then. Because if you turn around and do, like you said, all that red tape, that's what happened. From leaving the homeless commission to the city council's table came a $60,000 price tag for the Safe Sleep program that was just supposed to be implemented by the clergy, by different faith-based places. Now, when I say Operation Turnkey just had deaths, they have addictions in there. So there's nothing to help the homeless people as they go in, because it is a low barrier. So they're not checking or any type of addiction program, 12-step program, anything to help that and to curb that addiction. So that's the problems we have. We have to address the reason for the homelessness first. And that usually is what happens. And that's not what we're getting. Is it a city's problem? Unfortunately, yes now, because it's nationwide. And at one time, it probably could have been a community problem, but we're beyond that now. We can no longer have it a community, take a village type problem, because it is so big and it is so massive, and it takes cities now to come in and actually take care of its own. Now that we do work with the County of Ventura through the continuum of care, that's where the pockets of money from the state go into the county, and then they get allocated to the cities. I would like to see the city of Oxnard take back its money. We are the biggest city. We have the biggest problem. We should be taking care of our own pot so we can allocate more monies to the homeless services.
You know, one thing I've learned, and I'm sure Daniel and Lucy, you can attest to this, is that one thing I've learned in dealing with the city is that as a citizen, sometimes, you know, I mean, we all have great ideas, great suggestions, and why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? But then when you find out how things really work, it's like, you know, it's very hard sometimes to implement things. It's very hard. You can't just pull money out of a slush fund. You can't do, you know, you everything has to be done right. Otherwise, you know, there's audits and everything. So, you know, but do we have a big problem here in Oxnard? Of course. But it's going to take a village to fix this. It's going to take the people to push the city council. Is going to take the county, is going to take the state. I mean, you know, like I said, if this was an easy fix, well, this wouldn't be an epidemic, but unfortunately it is. And hopefully, you know, we can get this, you know, under wraps and do what needs to be done, you know. So I just want to say something real quick. I went to that Helico place myself, and the reason I went is Lucy invited me. You remember Lucy? Lucy took me over there, and I got to see firsthand, you know, the situation there. So, you know, when we can, we work together. We try to do everything we can to help the community, because we're both, you know, it's in our hearts, and you know, we mean well. We mean to do what's best for the community. So, so thank you for that, Lucy.
I will just say that since I have known Lucy, she has always been a very strong advocate for the homeless. There was one year she had went onto Facebook. It was still during the time when the Helico site had like over 500 people there. And she was talking about go to REI, go to all these different places and get these, they're kind of like the emergency blankets. They're supposed to keep you cool when it's hot, warm when it's cold. And I bought about 10 of those. And every time when I was driving through Oxnard and I saw a homeless individual, I stopped my car, I got out, I handed them one. And, you know, they looked at me like I was weird. They're like, why are you handing me this? I'm like, it is to help you. Please utilize it. And then a few days later, I saw them and they were utilizing it. So, Lucy, thank you for all your advocacy that you do. And I just wanted to touch on one thing that you mentioned was low bearing. And for those that don't know what a low bearing is, it's a type of housing or shelter that has the very least restrictions to any other shelters. Lucy mentioned that, these people are drug addiction and so forth. Very opposite of what the winter warming shelter has, where they're very restrictive. You have to, and Lucy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to actually kind of get wanded to make sure you have no weapons, no drugs, that you're not intoxicated going into the facility. So it's very restrictive, very opposite of what the vagabond is, where they kind of say, look, you're an adult, do what you have to do. Am I right in that sense, Lucy? Yeah, okay. Well, 3 topics, 2 viewpoints. And this was definitely one very interesting conversation. And I appreciate both of you guys being our first guests on this segment, the viewpoint. And the viewpoint will actually be a regular segment once a month. So our next one will be late April. Yeah, that's after March. So we will be having another segment of the viewpoint, 2 new guests. Again, 3 topics, 2 viewpoints, 1 very interesting conversation. So be sure to join us next week, Wednesday, for our Spanish program, Oxnard Live in Espanol, with my friend Adam Lopez. He will be interviewing Carolina Garado Magaña, who is a leader in the South Winds community, who has been a strong advocate for South Winds and South Oxnard, and also a former city council candidate. And then on Thursday, we will be and that's at 6 o'clock on Wednesday with Adam Lopez, right here on Oxnard Live. And then on Thursday, we will be having a local business, not of Oxnard, but who has been spreading the wealth of good faith throughout the county, and that is Will House Dispensaries of Port Hueneme. They'll be joining us as they talk about how they got their start, why are they so invested in raising the community up, and their anniversary celebration coming up on that following Sunday. So that is right here, Thursday at 4 p.m., Wednesday at 6 p.m. with Adam Lopez, with Carolina Garado Magaña. And this is Oxnard Live, all live and 100% real. Have a great night. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Manuel.
Bye, Daniel. Bye, Danny.
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Daniel. Great job.